They moved like shadows, silent, relentless, countless footsteps swallowed by darkness. The air vibrated with tension, a soundless warning no one could name. Something was wrong, very wrong. A sudden tremor, a rustle, a voice swallowed mid-sentence. Men froze, hearts pounded, eyes searched, but there was nothing to see. Nothing familiar. Orders shouted into emptiness. Echoes came back distorted, broken. Something was following, watching, waiting. The night grew thicker. The path ahead vanished. Then screams. Not from a distance, but up close, almost inside their minds. Men scattered, shouts collided with silence. A single lamp flickered, then died. Some turned back, others vanished without a trace. Every attempt to regroup failed. Radio calls answered with static. Compasses spun without reason. Fear became a living thing. Touch it, it bit. See it, it blinded. Hear it, it deafened. By dawn, only a handful remained. Silent, shivering, broken. Their eyes held stories they could not speak aloud. Questions they could not answer. And still the night had secrets. Shadows that refused to fade. Whispers that promised the unseen was not done. What force, what horror, could strike 30,000 men and leave almost none to tell the tale? The year was one of uncertainty. Armies lined up across a desolate landscape, tension hanging thicker than any winter fog. 30,000 men, trained, disciplined, and armed, prepared for what they believed was an ordinary campaign. But ordinary would not survive this night. Every soldier understood the stakes. Borders, alliances, and centuries-old conflicts converged here. The ground itself had a reputation. Locals spoke of strange disappearances, of soldiers marching into mist and never returning. Many dismissed these as superstition. Many would soon learn how fragile certainty could be. Maps were studied with care, terrain memorized, yet no paper could capture the danger waiting in silence. Supply lines stretched thin. Communication was uncertain. Radios could fail. Messengers could vanish. The unknown loomed as heavily as the armies themselves. Commanders moved with meticulous planning, drilling their men with relentless routine. Each order mattered, every misstep could cost lives. Morale was cautiously high, but anxiety simmered beneath the surface. Soldiers whispered about the strange noises at night, shadows in the fog, and unexplainable gaps in patrols. Some laughed nervously. Some grew pale. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the army advanced. The ground beneath them seemed to shift. Every step echoed differently, every sound magnified. The night promised nothing but uncertainty. Every man could feel it, a silent warning that the ordinary rules of battle did not apply here. Nothing prepared them for what they would encounter. Not training, not courage, not faith in command. The very air seemed to conspire against them. Yet the army moved forward, 30,000 strong, bound by orders and the illusion of control. No one could know that by dawn, almost all would vanish. Not a single report could predict it. Not a single map could chart it. And yet the whispers, the legends, and the fleeting shadows hinted that something extraordinary and terrifying was about to unfold. Among these 30,000, a few stand out not by rank but by presence. Men like Lieutenant Herrick, strong, disciplined, yet quietly anxious. A man who led his squad through endless drills, who rose at dawn and slept only when exhaustion allowed. He knew every man under his command. He knew their strengths, their fears, and their habits. Herrick's soldiers were trained to precision. Each knew their role. Each carried the weight of expectation. Morning drills, weapon inspections, and rigorous marches became ritual. Mistakes were punished swiftly. Disobedience was not tolerated. Lives depended on obedience, and discipline was the thin line between survival and chaos. But even in the calm of routine, subtle cracks appeared. Soldiers reported fleeting noises, shadows that moved against logic, and chills that did not belong to the wind. Herrick dismissed these at first, attributing them to nerves, yet he felt a gnawing unease he could not name. Daily life followed strict patterns. Meals, marches, and check-ins maintained the illusion of safety. Soldiers shared stories, jokes, and confidences, unaware that the night would demand more than courage. Bonds were forged quickly, laughter brief, and camaraderie a fragile shield against fear. Despite the rigid order, tension seeped into every corner. Each man sensed something beyond the ordinary, a presence not governed by strategy or weaponry. Herrick, trained to notice anomalies, observed unusual glances among men, strange hesitations, and unexplained absences during routine checks. Yet he could not voice his fear. Leadership demanded composure. Emotionally, the soldiers were a mix of pride, anxiety, and determination. Each carried the memory of home, of loved ones, of previous battles survived. They believed that discipline and courage were enough. They were wrong. The days leading to the march were eerily quiet. At first, the signs were subtle, easily dismissed by seasoned soldiers accustomed to fear and uncertainty. But subtlety soon gave way to something far more unsettling. It began with the radios, a crackle in the static, brief bursts of incoherent voices, calls that were never returned. Some officers reported hearing faint, distorted orders that made no sense. Messages sent out vanished into silence. Attempts to verify their content yielded nothing. No recordings, no confirmation, no trace. The air itself seemed to swallow communication. Patrols returned with strange tailies. Scouts spoke of lights glimmering in the distance, flickering and moving as if alive. Yet maps showed no settlements, no fires, no landmarks where these lights could exist. When teams tried to investigate, the lights vanished, leaving only an uneasy emptiness behind. Some men laughed nervously, others grew pale, whispering about shadows that shouldn't be there. Even the animals sensed it. Horses became restless, neighing at nothing, refusing to step forward along familiar paths. Dogs growled at invisible threats. Birds fled the skis at odd hours, leaving an unnatural silence in their wake. Some soldiers swore they heard footsteps behind them, but when they turned, no one was there. Small accidents multiplied in unusual ways. Equipment failed inexplicably. Weaponry jammed for no apparent reason. Tents collapsed without storm or wind. Rations were spoiled in sealed containers. Men reported dizziness, headaches, and sudden chills, though no illness was present. Then came the disappearances. A small reconnaissance squad vanished entirely while checking the perimeter. Their absence was not reported immediately, first assumed to be a delay or miscommunication, but hours passed without word. When search parties returned, they carried nothing but a faint, lingering sense of dread. Items were found: boots, a helmet, but no bodies, no footprints, nothing that explained their disappearance. Soldiers began speaking in hushed tones. Odd behavior emerged. Men who were usually composed froze without reason. Some refused to move forward. Others became hyperactive, jumping at shadows. Orders, once unquestioned, were now met with hesitation. Fear began to spread like a contagion, invisible but palpable. By the eve of the march, the entire camp felt wrong. The usual nocturnal sounds, crickets, distant wildlife, the wind through trees, were absent. Silence pressed down like a weight. Shadows seemed thicker, denser, almost tangible. Even the officers could not deny it. Something was lurking, watching, waiting. And yet duty demanded they march forward. No one knew what they were about to face. The warning signs had grown too obvious to ignore, yet no one could articulate them. Fear was everywhere, but answers were nowhere. The night promised danger, but what form it would take remained hidden in the dark. It was a calm before a storm unlike any these men had ever known, an invisible tension waiting to erupt, waiting to consume them. And the first hints of horror had already begun to whisper through the ranks, unnoticed by all but the most observant. The night had already swallowed the army. 30,000 men advanced under a sky that seemed heavier than usual, clouds blotting out stars. darkness pressing down like a living thing. Every step they took echoed strangely, a distorted rhythm that set nerves on edge. The first signs appeared almost immediately. A faint rustle in the darkness, too distant to identify, too deliberate to ignore. Soldiers paused, glancing at one another, calling out names, but voices bounced back distorted, unfamiliar. Something was out there, something unseen. Orders were shouted, but they returned in fragments. Radio static swallowed reports. All squads proceed became squads proceed, and then silence. Soldiers strained their ears, but the night refused to answer. The usual sounds of movement, boots crunching, armor clinking, now seemed muffled, as if the ground itself absorbed sound. Then came the first disappearances. A small squad ahead, following the marked path, vanished before Herrick's eyes. One moment they were visible, marching in formation, the next gone, no screams, no struggle. Nothing remained but the faint flicker of a lantern on the ground. Confusion rippled instantly through the ranks. Men called for comrades who did not respond. Others tried to retrace their steps, only to find the terrain had changed. Paths they had walked countless times now seemed endless, twisting, impossible to follow. Compasses spun, maps lost meaning, and darkness thickened with every passing minute. Panic set in. Soldiers shouted. The sound collided with silence, echoing eerily and then vanishing. Some ran forward blindly, others tried to regroup. Herrick attempted to lead his squad, but even familiar landmarks were gone. The night had become a labyrinth. Screams erupted, not from a distance but surrounding them. Voices overlapping, unrecognizable, some human, some not. Men froze, disoriented. Even the most disciplined soldiers struggled to obey orders. Shadows moved against logic, stretching unnaturally, following them, disappearing, reappearing. A lamp flickered briefly, illuminating faces twisted with fear. Soldiers reached for one another, grasping at emptiness. Footsteps sounded in multiple directions simultaneously. Attempts to organize units collapsed as men stumbled over unseen obstacles, over comrades who had simply vanished. By midnight, the army had fragmented. Small pockets of men tried to move together, but every attempt at coordination failed. Radio calls returned only static, lanterns went dark, and the wind carried whispers that were not words. Herrick's squad, once 30 strong, had been reduced to barely a dozen. The landscape itself seemed alive, shifting subtly under their feet. Hills appeared where none had been, valleys opened where solid ground was expected. Some men claimed the fog had eyes, glinting briefly before retreating into nothingness. Others reported faint lights, moving like flares, impossible to reach. Time stretched. Minutes became hours. Every step forward seemed to take them deeper into the unknown. Fatigue set in, but no rest offered relief. Sleep was impossible. Even closing eyes invited hallucinations, shadows crawling at the edge of vision. And then, just as suddenly as the chaos began, silence fell. Complete, suffocating silence. The sounds of movement, of screaming, of radio static all vanished. The night held its breath. Only the scattered survivors remained, huddled, trembling, unable to comprehend what had transpired. By dawn, 30,000 men had marched into the night. Only a handful emerged, broken, disoriented, and haunted. No bodies, no evidence of battle. Nothing explained the disappearance of the vast army. Footprints stopped abruptly. Equipment was abandoned, yet untouched. And the night receded, leaving behind a calm that felt unnatural, almost deliberate. Herrick and the few survivors stared at the horizon, their eyes empty, their minds struggling to understand. What force could strike 30,000 men and leave almost none? What had claimed them and why? The night held its secrets tight, and the world would not see their answers. In that silence, one thing was clear. Whatever had happened would not be explained by training, courage, or discipline. The army had faced something far beyond any known danger, and survived only by chance. At first light, the scale of the disaster became terrifyingly clear. 30,000 men had marched into the night. Only fragments of their units returned. The ground was eerily quiet, devoid of footprints, equipment, or any sign of struggle. The survivors were scattered, shaken, and often unable to articulate what they had seen or failed to see. Commanders ordered immediate search operations. Teams scoured the terrain systematically, moving through fog-laden valleys, dense forests, and uneven hillsides. But the search yielded almost nothing. Boots were found, sometimes helmets, occasionally discarded weapons, but no bodies, no evidence of skirmish, no clue of what had claimed the vast army. Investigators interviewed survivors, but the accounts were fragmented and contradictory. Some described shadows moving impossibly fast. Others insisted the terrain itself shifted under their feet. The few who had witnessed the early disappearances provided stories that did not align with one another. One man swore he saw a fellow soldier vanish before his eyes. Another claimed the same soldier was alive moments later, wandering blindly. Military records reflected confusion. Radio logs were inconsistent. Some transmissions appeared in the files but were never actually sent. Patrol reports contradicted themselves. Maps were missing key areas, or entire regions were redrawn in later versions. It was as if the landscape and the events themselves refused to be documented. Higher command ordered forensic inspections. Ground was examined for tracks, soil disturbances, or signs of combat. Nothing conclusive appeared. Instruments recorded anomalies, temperature drops, magnetic disturbances, fleeting radio signals, but all were dismissed as equipment error. Yet the officers who observed these anomalies never spoke of them publicly again. Reports were compiled, rewritten, and in some cases, partially erased. Witnesses were sworn to secrecy. Some were reassigned or sent home under vague pretenses. Attempts to corroborate accounts across units revealed gaps, missing documents, lost recordings, and personnel who had inexplicably disappeared. Despite the scale of the loss, official statements were careful, minimal, and deliberately vague. Confusion during night operations and unexpected logistical failures were cited as causes, but anyone reviewing the surviving reports could sense the gaps, the deliberate silence surrounding the true events. Investigators also noted strange phenomena. Several officers reported hearing faint whispers in the fog or seeing lights that moved without explanation. These notes were marked confidential, then removed from public archives. Some files were labeled classified, do not discuss, and entire sections of the investigation vanished from the record. By the end of the search, the surviving soldiers were relocated, debriefed, and dispersed. They carried the memories of the night, memories they were not supposed to share. The Army's numerical strength was restored on paper, but the truth was missing. 30,000 men had vanished into the night, and the world outside would never know how or why. Yet whispers persisted. Among those who studied the reports, some claimed they could sense contradictions, subtle signs that something had happened beyond human comprehension. Records erased, testimonies altered, and classified notes hinted that the event was deliberately hidden from view. The investigation concluded officially with uncertainty. Orders were given to move on, as if ignoring the unexplainable could make it disappear. And in the quiet aftermath, a chilling question remained. If 30,000 trained soldiers could vanish so completely, what force or entity had orchestrated it? What truly happened that night remains one of the most confounding mysteries in military history. Despite official investigations, witness testimonies, and ground searches, no definitive answer exists. Over time, several theories have emerged, each compelling and each flawed. Some historians argue that an unknown hostile force, perhaps a previously unrecorded militia or covert unit, ambushed the army. The speed and precision of the disappearances could suggest a tactical strike on an unprecedented scale. Yet this theory has glaring contradictions. No evidence of enemy presence, no bodies, no campfires, no discarded weapons was ever found. Satellite reconnaissance, terrain surveys, and post-incident patrols revealed nothing unusual. Could an entire army vanish without leaving a trace? The files hint at encounters that were quickly erased from official records. Another explanation points to environmental factors. Sudden fog, treacherous terrain, or landslides could have disoriented troops and caused mass separation. Extreme weather, magnetic anomalies, or geological instability might explain the vanishing. But terrain records before and after the event show no signs of disaster. Scouts and surviving officers described normal conditions. If nature were to blame, it left behind an absence far stranger than its presence. Some analysts suggest mass panic, a psychological contagion swept through the army. Fear, exhaustion, and stress could have led men to flee in disorder, abandoning equipment and comrades. Yet this theory cannot account for the survival of a few groups while the majority disappeared. Witnesses described phenomena beyond normal perception: impossible shadows, fleeting lights, sounds that had no source. Panic alone cannot explain the sheer scale and coordination of the vanishing. A more controversial theory proposes forces beyond human understanding. Survivors spoke of whispers in the fog, lights moving against the wind, and terrain that shifted as if alive. Some classified files mention patrols encountering phenomena that defied logic, later removed from official archives. Whispers of the night itself, taking soldiers, abound in secret reports. While impossible to confirm, these accounts remain consistent across multiple, independent testimonies, suggesting that something profoundly unexplainable occurred. Each theory presents compelling points, but each is undermined by contradictions. Enemy action leaves no trace. Natural disasters leave evidence. Panic cannot create shadows or vanish thousands. The supernatural remains unprovable, yet stubbornly consistent. Some files hint that investigators themselves encountered anomalies they could not record. Witnesses were silenced, and reports were edited, partially erased, or classified. The true nature of the event may have been deliberately hidden. In the end, the theories coexist uneasily. None can be confirmed. None can be fully dismissed. And the army, 30,000 strong, vanished into the night, leaving behind only fragments of evidence, scattered memories, and a lingering question: what is real, and what remains forever unknowable? The night still whispers its secrets. 30,000 soldiers entered its darkness, and almost none returned. Those who survived carry memories too heavy to speak aloud. Their eyes tell stories words cannot capture, stories of silence, shadows, and disappearance. Official investigations ended without answers. Files were sealed, reports erased, witnesses silenced. The world moved on, oblivious to the enormity of what had occurred. Yet even in their absence, the unanswered questions linger. Was it enemy action, a natural disaster, mass panic, or something that defies logic entirely? The surviving documents offer hints, fragments, and contradictions, but no certainty. Every theory has holes. Every witness carries doubt. Every answer leads to another question. Some say the truth was deliberately hidden. Others whisper that it was never meant to be understood. Perhaps there are forces, seen or unseen, that operate beyond our comprehension. Forces that cannot be fought, measured, or even acknowledged. And perhaps those forces are still out there, waiting. The survivors returned changed, silent, haunted, and wary. They live as reminders that some events are too vast, too strange, or too terrible to be contained by ordinary explanations. And the night, relentless and patient, keeps its secrets intact. So we are left with only questions. Questions that linger in the mind long after the video ends. What truly claimed 30,000 men? How did the night erase their presence so completely? And most chilling of all, could it happen again? Perhaps the only way to know is to wonder, to speculate, to share your own theories, but be careful. Some mysteries resist understanding. Some darkness refuses to be illuminated. What do you think waited in the shadows that night? and what is still waiting, even now.